The following program contains an all-you-can-eat philosophical buffet. If you suffer from mental indigestion, Randall may not be right for you. Check with your gastronomist.
Speaking the truth when others hold their tongues. Wrestling for justice with left-wingers and crocodiles. Resisting the temptation to keep the peace at any price. The only talk show host who writes his own theme music, Randall Terry.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Well, the word is out. The Supreme Court has ruled by a 7-2 decision that it is God. Just joking. All right, but they are trying to rule on whether or not God's definition of marriage will prevail or that of perhaps Sodom and Gomorrah. Didn't go so well for those folks, did it? We'll talk to you about that today. And the governor of North Dakota has signed 3 of those pro-life pieces of legislation. It's good news for babies. There's a long fight ahead. I'll tell you more after a quick word from the professor. This man is genius.
The Heisenberg uncertainty principle states that we cannot know the position and the momentum of a quantum particle. That's not to be mistaken with the Obama uncertainty principle that states that we cannot know the position that our country will be in once we hit the jagged rocks at the bottom of the cliff, once our economy collapses. And we cannot know the momentum that we will be headed off that cliff, only that we're headed off a cliff.
Welcome to the program, friend. Well, it's a long time coming, but at least one state in the union is now displaying some courage, a little bit, in the protection of unborn babies. Governor Randall of North Dakota has signed 3 of the pro-life bills that have reached his desk. One of them says that an abortionist has to have admission rights at a local hospital to deal with any complications that arose when he killed a baby, and the woman's life might also be in danger, which happens all the time. Women die in safe, legal abortions, and oftentimes they die at a hospital while the abortionist is off doing God knows what with his blood money. So he signed that one. He signed one that says that you cannot kill a baby after the heartbeat is detectable. Well, you can detect a baby's heartbeat at around 6 weeks, which means that virtually all killing of babies in North Dakota would be brought to a halt. The proponents of child killing are howling their lungs out. Now, let me explain this to you. You'll see in this image here a baby at 6 weeks, okay? They don't abort babies at that age. They abort babies usually 10 to 12 weeks. About 90% of all babies murdered are murdered in the 10th to 12th week of their development. Now, the reason is sick, I'm letting you know ahead of time, it's because they have to reassemble the body. If they kill a child and the baby is too young and they leave just small parts of the remains of that precious life inside of the woman's uterus, an infection can occur, septic shock, and even death to the woman. So they want to wait till the child is a little bit more developed, take the child apart piecemeal, and then reassemble 2 arms, 2 legs, a torso, and a head. It's hideous, I know, I'm sorry, but that's what we're dealing with. So the governor signed it, and he also signed a law that bans babies for being murdered if they are handicapped in some way. So that's good as well. He did not sign the bill that would have conveyed all of the protection of law on a human being from conception until birth. He did not veto it either. We'll let you know what happens. Nevertheless, it's still a good fight to have. The people at National Right to Life, the treacherous people at National Right to Life notwithstanding, and Ohio Right to Life and other groups around the country who are in league with the baby killers with their so-called strategy. All right, to the Supreme Court. We're going to play some audio clips. And by the way, let me just back up. I'm going to bring this North Dakota bill, or these bills rather, back into the show a little bit later to show how they impact you, how they will impact the nation. And those laws in North Dakota will be challenged. And so, of course, the question again is, do we live in a constitutional republic, or do we live under a judicial dictatorship? Do we live as the serfs of a judicial oligarchy? And tragically, over the last 50 years, that has been what has proven the case. We are the subjects of these gods who walk amongst us. Well, the gods convened yesterday and today again, dealing with Proposition 8 in California, and then the Defense of Marriage Act, which is the law of the land for all 50 states, signed 17 years ago by our incredibly conservative President, Bill Clinton.
Thanks, Randall. I've been waiting for you to acknowledge that I was a conservative all these years. You're a good man.
Okay, just joking. Anyway, we're going to play one or two audio clips from the Supreme Court oral arguments. We're going to play a clip from the head of the Republican Party, the chairman, to show his hostility to Christianity. And we're going to answer the question that Justice Elena Kagan asked. Justice Kagan asked a question when she didn't get a very good answer. I've got the answer for you, Elena. I'm going to read to you from the Word of God. And I'm sure that your mind and your soul will be expanded as you hear the truth. So don't go away. Talking about Proposition 8. And again, for the sake of clarity, the question is, will the rule of law prevail? When you have the people of California passing a constitutional amendment, a popular vote, a ballot initiative, where they voted, the people of the state voted to change their state constitution to say that marriage can only be between a man and a woman. When you have that, the rule of law, the voice of the people reflecting the voice of God, when you have that being challenged before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court considering striking down the will of millions of people and bringing a frontal assault to the will of God, we've got a problem, Houston, and it's big.
Randall and I were rushing to meet Lewis and Clark at the Falls of the Ohio when we realized that we weren't going to make it on time because of the necessity of portage. Randall was so frustrated with this event that he yelled at the top of his lungs, "A beaver can build a dam, but two cities filled with people can't." What resulted from this was the largest lock and dam built to date. How about that?
How would you like to be able to reach hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of potential customers with your product or your company or your web-based business? Well, you can do that right here on this show. Every single day, we get phone calls or letters or orders online from states all over the country where people are watching this television show. Right now, we are seen in 45 cities at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time every night, and then a rerun again at 12:30 midnight. You can reach them using this show at advertising rates that are so inexpensive, it would blow your mind. So, if you're interested, contact us at the phone number that you see on the screen or the email address, and we can talk about how you can grow your business and help support this show. Welcome back, friend. Justice Alito, in the oral arguments regarding Proposition 8 in California, had this to say.
Do you want us to step in and render a decision based on an assessment of the effects of this institution, which is newer than cell phones or the internet?
Well, actually, Justice Alito, that is exactly what they want you to do. They want you to jump in and they want you to rewrite the laws of God and to rewrite human history. And you find a difficulty with that? What's wrong with you? Why aren't you more progressive? All right, Justice Scalia asked this question.
If you redefine marriage to include same-sex couples, you must permit adoption by same-sex couples. And there's considerable disagreement among sociologists as to what the consequences of raising a child in a single-sex family, whether that is harmful to the child or not.
Well, I want you to please understand that he makes a good point. We don't know what the effects of this having a little boy raised by two lesbian mommies or two homosexual daddies or a little girl raised in a similar situation. I think, I could be wrong, but I think we could have a pretty good guess that there would be some sexual or gender confusion that might come as a result of that. But let's set that aside for a minute, okay? I want to read to you a quote that was from Sotomayor from the oral arguments. She said, "Why aren't they a class, homosexuals? If they're a class, that makes any other discrimination improper, irrational. Then why aren't we treating them as a class for this one thing? Are you saying that the interest of marriage is so compelling, so much more compelling than any other interest as they could have?" I want you to hear something that's missing, all right? Alito's concern was over the timing. This is new. I mean, time matters. Scalia's concern was over the impact on children. Sotomayor's concern is for these homosexuals that should be treated as a group of people and not discriminated against. I want to point out two critical things, and if you've got small kids in the room, you need to tell them to get out, all right? Number one, what defines a homosexual? It's their behavior. It's what they do with private areas of their bodies with other people of the same gender. It's something that's defined by behavior. All right? And number two, all of the discussions, everything that I've read so far, it's a God-less discussion. They take God completely out of the equation. Now let's go back to the first part. A black person cannot be discriminated against because it's an accident of birth, as the court uses in its language. If you are African American, Hispanic, white, Indian, whatever you are, it's an accident of birth, but we're all human beings, okay? Therefore, we all have the same rights as human beings. The right of life, liberty, and property. The right to be protected by law in our persons and in our property, okay? That is a common right by virtue of the fact that we're all humans. So therefore, the Jim Crow laws were fundamentally immoral because they sought to take a person out of the protection of law based upon the color of their skin. That is evil because the skin pigmentation has changed over the millennia, but we're all still from the same parents, Adam and Eve, and we all still have the protection of the same laws of God and the laws of civil government. In addition to that, the issue of God being in the equation, you need to hear this, and we'll talk more about this in our next segment. You ready? If you take God out of the equation, you cannot win this argument. If you do not have God, a theocentric view of the nature of man, the nature of marriage, and the nature of law itself, if you take God out of the equation, you lose. And so Alito's argument holds no ground. Time isn't the issue. It's whether it's right or wrong because there's a creator who says it's right and wrong. And Scalia's argument doesn't hold any water. The impact on children. Who cares? If it's not right or wrong, if it's ambivalent, if it's okay and you get to choose what's right and wrong, then the impact on kids is negligible. And Sotomayor's argument that these people should be treated as a class, if there is no God, then she's right. She's right. I'll be right back.
You know what I gotta say about Randall Terry? Just push play! Ow!
Friend, you need to get this book. We Won't Get Fooled Again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you. Hello, friend. One of the main reasons that we do this program is not simply to bring you the news. You can get your news anywhere. It's to help you to see beyond the headlines into the ethical world, into the next life, into how the laws of heaven should and must apply in this world, and what you can do to advance the kingdom of heaven and justice and righteousness in the earth, how you can prevail in grammar, logic, and rhetoric, in discussions, in debates, in the political realm, in the implementation of policy, so that America is restored and does not continue its headlong dive into a moral cesspool. In other words, I want to call you out of the stands and into the arena where you are part of the solution instead of being part of the problem by simply sitting back and doing and saying nothing. Okay? So, this segment and the last are going to deal with some pretty touchy issues. Let me play a clip from the chairman of the Republican Party. His name is Reince Priebus, and play the. I'm sorry. Priebus. I'm sorry. Didn't have my glasses on. You watch the clip, and then I'll talk.
My position is that marriage is between a man and a woman, but my other position is also that you treat people with dignity and respect and love and grace, and so I think they're all compatible with each other. I don't believe that, I don't believe we need to act like, Old Testament heretics either. And so,
what does that mean? Not act like Old Testament heretics.
I think you know it when you see it. I think that you have to strike a balance between principle and grace and respect, and that's what I'm just trying to do.
All right. So look at the genius and the duplicity and the fact that he missed the mark. First of all, Reince, you can't even define an Old Testament heretic. That was a nice line. I'm not sure where it came from, but they're going to try and use that line over and over. They're going to call people like you and I who want to defend marriage Old Testament heretics. And then he starts talking about grace. Well, listen. We must treat homosexual individuals with dignity. Why? Not because they're homosexuals, but because they're human beings. Because they're made in the image of God. They have a sexual addiction. They have sexual conflict. They have sexual confusion. They have an interest in a sin, a mortal sin, a sin that is consistently, without equivocation, condemned in the Scriptures. But because they are made in the image of God, and because Christ died for them, we must treat them with grace and kindness. The way we would treat with grace and kindness someone who was addicted to a narcotic, or somebody who was addicted to stealing, or any other number of sins or crimes. It's the fact that they are made in the image of God that means that we should treat them with dignity. But those of us who stand for the truth are not Old Testament heretics. Now, when we come back from this break, I'm going to read to you from the Old Testament so you understand what he's talking about and what's at stake. And I'm going to answer the question that Justice Kagan asked for you and for the whole country. Don't go away.
Moments with Moses. I will devastate the land, so that your enemies who settle in it shall be astonished at it.
How would you like to be able to reach hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of potential customers with your product or your company or your web-based business? Well, you can do that right here on this show. Every single day, we get phone calls or letters or orders online from states all over the country where people are watching this television show. Right now, we are seen in 45 cities at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time every night, and then a rerun again at 12:30 midnight. You can reach them using this show at advertising rates that are so inexpensive, it would blow your mind. So, if you're interested, contact us at the phone number that you see on the screen or the email address, and we can talk about how you can grow your business and help support this show.
Can wicked rulers be allied with thee, who frame mischief by statute? They band together against the life of the righteous and condemn the innocent to death. But the Lord has become my stronghold, and my God, the rock of my refuge. He will bring back on them their iniquity and wipe them out for their wickedness. The Lord our God will wipe them out.
Welcome back, friend. Justice Kagan, who, by the way, argued that third trimester child killing should be the right of a woman, so obviously her ethical compass is screwed up. She asked this question.
What harm you see happening, and when and how, and what harm to the institution of marriage or to opposite-sex couples?
Well, here's the answer, Elena. Justice Kagan, here's the answer. God said, "Do not give any of your children to be sacrificed to Molech, for you must not profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. Do not have sexual relations with a man as one does with a woman. That is detestable." That's homosexual behavior. "Do not have sexual relations with an animal and defile yourself with it. A woman must not present herself to an animal to have sexual relations with it. That is a perversion." This is talking about bestiality. "Do not defile yourselves in any of these ways, because this is how the nations that I am going to drive out before you became defiled. Even the land was defiled, so I punished it for its sin, and the land vomited out its inhabitants. But you must keep my decrees and my laws. The native born and the foreigners residing among you must not do any of these detestable things, and if you defile the land, it will vomit you out, as it vomited out the nations that were before you." So the answer, Justice Kagan, is the harm that it would do is the destruction of a nation. The nations that were before Israel in the Promised Land, God said, "I'm judging them. The land will vomit them out because they killed their babies. They offer their children to Molech, and the ground cries with blood because they practice these detestable sexual sins, and the land vomits them out." And God said, "If you do that, I'm going to judge you. The land will vomit you out." Like I said, if we take God out of the equation, we lose the argument. So then the issue becomes, do we have the courage to say the truth? 50 years ago, if I'd have stood up and said, we need to have homosexual marriage, I'd have been beaten, literally physically beaten, all right? Because people still believed in right and wrong, in good and evil. But now that good and evil have been thrown to the wind, we are the villains because we want to say the truth and fight for justice. So then the question becomes, do we have the courage to say and to act out the truth in the middle of a hostile throng? God give us strength. See you tomorrow.